pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. In front of us, we have an agenda. The only thing that I will bring up is David's, the number 6. David has some other things going on, so when we get to number 6, we'll just save it. And if he doesn't show up before the meeting's over, we'll just have to discuss it next week. But he's got somebody here today checking on the fire extinguisher alarm, so he might not be here. Do we have any motions to approve the agenda, or is there any other changes or issues there with the agenda? If not, do we have any motions to approve the agenda? So moved. We have a motion.
I'll second that.
Mark is seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Approve the agenda. Approve the minutes of the February 2nd meeting and the claims.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the February 2nd meeting and the claims.
Jim has made a motion.
I can second that.
Mike has seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Hearing none, that has been approved. County Attorney General discussion. Are you there, Mark?
Yes, I am.
I will let you have the floor.
Just by way of explanation, Iowa law requires that every 5 years, every county, every city re-adopt its ordinances, and you do that by adopting an ordinance. And the way you adopt an ordinance is we set a time and a place for hearing, which I would suggest we set it for March 2nd at 8:45. And then that notice goes into the paper. Then anyone who's in favor or support of the ordinance can show up, or they can give comments to the supervisors or to Rachel. Normally an ordinance requires 3 readings, and it's not actually readings, it's just 3 public hearings before passage. But if it's non-controversial, usually the board waits the first or the second hearing and just goes right to the 3rd hearing. If it's controversial, they have all 3 hearings. So I would suggest all we're doing today is setting a time and a place for hearing on Mitchell County Ordinance 53, isn't it, Rachel?
Yes.
And have that set for March 2nd at 8:45 a.m. So we need a motion to that effect.
We have a motion.
I'll make a motion
Mike
for the public hearing.
Mike has made a motion.
I'll second that.
Mark has seconded it. Do we need a roll call on this? Or can we?
No, we do not.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Hearing none, this has been approved. This will be for the hearing on Ordinance 53 on March 2nd at 8:45.
That's all I have, unless anyone has any questions for me.
Seems to be pretty quiet. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Moving on, Sheriff update.
I don't have anything for you guys this morning unless you guys have questions for me.
Hearing nothing, that's a good thing.
That's a good update.
Everything running okay with the weather and
It has been, Todd, yeah, we had a few issues with vehicles in the ditch, semis in the ditch, but, no fatalities like a week or so ago, so, you know, we're doing pretty good that way. Yeah, we're good.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Greg.
You bet, thank you guys, have a good day.
County engineer update, Richard.
Morning.
Good morning.
I have some equipment quotes from the Diamond Mower Company for mower components, but they haven't gotten back to me on anything for a full-blown unit. But what I'll do also, since I have the component quotes, I can also check with the local dealers and see what they've got for tractors and what kind of deals we can get, and put the components together with the tractors to find out what we need. Like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, what we're looking at is probably a different brush cutter. The other ones we got is pretty old, and then maybe an additional highway gravel mower just to hand down the Ford that we have. The New Holland that we have is getting kind of old. We can still use it, but we probably want to put something back on the highways again. We've only got really 2 decent mowers. It'd be nice to throw another one in there and a decent brush cutter too. So we'll see what the numbers come out to be like. Not saying we have to buy anything, but we do have that 7130 sitting around that has a loader and forks on it. We don't use it very often. Maybe put it to use as a mower somehow. The one thing is if we put a brush cutter arm on that one, it's got a rear rest so it doesn't sit out to the side, so you got some side visibility, but you also have the opportunity with that is to still have the hitch in the back to run the groomer if we want to. Might be a little heavy having the mower on there, but you can still pull the groomer with it. You still have that functionality with it, so still could be a dual purpose unit, but we'll see how that goes. But I'll get some more numbers.
Did it have the power to do both?
Well, you really wouldn't want to be mowing and grooming at the same time, but you could keep.
You didn't.
I'm sorry, it being dual purposes, you could still have the mower on there and you could still run the roads with the groomer, unhook it, and if you need to go brush cut, just having a dual purpose unit like that, you wouldn't do it at the same time.
Too much to keep track of.
What's
Too
that?
much to watch.
Well, and you can't brush cut as fast as you need to groom, so you wouldn't be doing that. But the tractor could still serve the purpose of running the groomer too, if the weight's not overbearing and it can pull. So, but it is a larger tractor that we have. We bought a funnel plow on our Mac last time. The guys wanted to try a funnel plow, and they're not too pleased with the performance of it, especially if we get some drifting in the middle. So, and I talked to the manufacturer, the Christeel, we bought the equipment from. They may be able to kind of trade us or swap us a different plow, go back to the ones we had before. I think the connections are the hookups are the same. So I'll just look into that and see. I talked to the operator of that plow, and they thought it would be nice, but it just doesn't work the way they envisioned it to. Those funnel plows like to throw snow a little further, but the way this one's set up, it's so narrow at center line that if you end up getting too deep of a drift, it just doesn't do what they thought it would do. So
what, just want to have more curl to it? Or
yeah, there's a lot of curl to it, but it's also the one funnel plow we have is like a 36-inch, and this one's more like an 18, so it's really narrow down at the road at the center line side, and they can't see it from the truck very well either. So and I don't think that it's going to be a big deal to try to swap it out. So we'll just see. I'll get some information from them. And I told them for the time being I could park the plow and just grab one off another truck because the connections we have are all the same between the Sterlings and the new Macs. So, and then with our saw cutting that we've been doing the last spring and fall, needing to seal those cracks. Winnebago County has an old tar kettle they don't use anymore, and renting a tar kettle is I think it's like $1,600 a week. They've got an old 1987 model Craftco tar kettle they might sell us for maybe under $3,000, and that would give us a little bit of freedom to use that tar kettle whenever we need it. So it might be something we can look at purchasing, because it'll take us more than 1 week to probably see what we want to do on these roads, and it gives us the freedom to do it whenever we want, instead of having a tar kettle here and using it for a day, and then it sets a day because we've got something else going on, and pretty soon you've got $3,000 stuck into rent that you've only used a few days versus owning one for $3,000, and if you park it, you can sell it again or whatever. So I'm just going to look into that and see if the machine's decent yet or not. But it sounds like the mechanic from Winnebago County says it's operational. It's been sitting outside for a few years because it was taking up space inside. So see how they work. But not to say that we got to purchase anything, but if you're looking at renting one to do what we need to do versus having to purchase one, we can purchase one for maybe less than what we would rent one for, and then we'd have it and have the freedom, said, to seal cracks whenever we need to.
Now, that would use the square block.
Yeah, yep, the square block. It's different than the Durapatcher that we use with Worth County. It's just a different material. It's a more rubberized sealer than the Durapatcher is more of an asphaltic surfacer patcher. So.
They're somewhat fun to put them blocks in.
Watching butter melt, right?
Well, if it splashes back and it gets you.
Well, there's a unit on the lid. You're supposed to put it on the lid, and then you flip the lid so that doesn't happen. But sometimes people get in a hurry, leave the lid open, and start plopping them in. So I'm looking at that a little bit too. And then I did have a request from the Osage School District to plow 335th from Jersey to Kirkwood. They've got a pretty long bus route on that route, and to alleviate, to reduce some of the ride times, they asked us we plow that open. It's a level B road. We don't normally plow it, but I think since the school requested that we keep it open for them, I think we'll do that. So I had the road foreman go out and have the operator go out and at least open it yesterday so that they could get the buses through.
What division of the school requested it?
The transportation department did.
Okay.
And I think that was in conjunction with the assistant superintendent.
Okay.
So
They
I did get the
they
email.
are very limited on the buses that they do take out anymore.
Right, so they've got bigger routes, and they're trying to reduce ride times for the kids, so.
I had a call from a parent, how come they didn't have school Friday? And I said, well, I'll check into it. And I know you're out 4 o'clock, motor graders are out on gravels. And so I went out and looked at the few that I saw, and I didn't see any place that they couldn't probably make it before the snow. And if they started at 4 and they ran 4 hours, they would have been over 3/4 of the route with that thing of snow, because there was hardly anything out there. So I think we got a kind of a bad rap on that deal.
Yeah, I don't know how the school makes that decision at all. I don't know if it was because it stayed windy and it was gonna drift in some spot. I know there were some spots out in the gravels that were drifted more than others, but I mean, we're going out at 4 and we're getting our routes covered, so whatever they decide is whatever they decide, but.
I don't know if it was, because they didn't have school Wednesday, because they have a, e-learning day or whatever?
Yeah, I can't remember. It was Thursday, I think, it was the blizzard day. They had their e-learning day.
Wednesday, they don't have school, Osage, I know.
Oh, I don't know which school district you're talking about.
So they didn't have school Wednesday, Thursday was a blizzard, and Friday they didn't have school. Kids were home Saturday and Sunday. I think some of the parents are getting kind of thin.
Well,
And I don't know, being on the school board, I haven't talked with Barb or Bobby, but I can kind of, for Old Stage, I can tell you how that works. In the mornings, usually at 5, Barb, the superintendent, goes to the school, and then Bobby and her go drive around, and they kind of make the call together. Now, when Friday came, that school closing was quite early. Again, I haven't talked with Barb, and I do know it was very windy, because my boy works for Pollard's, and he had to go to work at 5 o'clock Friday morning, and he's only a sophomore, but he said it was so dang windy out, he was like froze, and that's mostly in town.
Yep.
So, I'm not real sure if they took that wind in, because I'm with you, I kind of thought school could go because of, the plows probably were out.
Yeah,
You say they were out.
and a lot of times though, with that kind of wind, we can plow through it a few hours later, it'll be drifting shut again, but, I mean, it wasn't snowing, but you still got that blowing snow. I don't know why they make the decisions they make, or how, them closing schools. I mean, we were out plowing, we can only do so much with the weather, so.
I talked to Bobby, and he's off with medical, he had surgery, so he wasn't there, so now I just had a call from, or a recording from the superintendent. She said she talked to somebody from secondary roads, and they said they won't be over until noon.
Probably not completely over all of them,
No,
but they had a good start.
Yeah.
You start at 4, I don't,
That sounds right.
Yeah,
how early do you want us to start?
Well, yeah, you can't start any earlier. And being on a Friday and 2 hours late and cold, that had anything to do with it. I don't know, but I asked her if there's anything we can
difficult for parents if they've got their kids at home and you got e-learning and you got the way things are now, yeah.
Thing of it is if we start at 4, we've done our part.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Then
And I
he
don't-
has to be upset with
I don't know, you know,
somebody else that called the school up.
I don't know how else to, you know, if we wanna run. Did she give any suggestions on what we can do different, or what she thought we could do different, other
I
than
just
run
listened
24
to her.
hours a day?
Well, yeah, she said start earlier, but you can't do that.
Oh my gosh,
No.
we've already got the guys out there for 12 hours.
There's 3 school districts, and I can't see how we couldn't get over any of the roads. We had to get over some of them.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So when I talked to a teacher at St. Ansgar, and they were getting their shots that morning for COVID,
Mhm.
and then Aldous got the message that they called off school, so she was scrambling to get the e-learning going.
Yeah, that was a real timing thing
So
there.
she was beside herself.
Yeah.
They had told her school was canceled. And then parents got babysitters.
Oh, yeah, it's, the way that one worked in St. Ansgar was, it was a 2-hour delay the night before. And so everybody's, you know, like, you know, the kids are gonna stay up all night and have a good time and sleep in, and then all of a sudden you get this call at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's an e-learning day, and school starts at 8:15, and you're like, oh, good grief, you know, now you gotta try to struggle, and my wife's a teacher, and it was a struggle there too, you know, trying to, all of a sudden you're trying to plan for an e-learning day when nobody really understood what was gonna happen, so. But that's not secondary roads issue, but it is a timing thing, and I guess I don't know what else you want us to do with plowing snow. I mean, we go out at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's a lot earlier than our policy says that we would go out, but we've been kind of on that habit now of going out early. And the reason we go out early is because we can get out there before a lot of traffic pounds in that snow and makes it tougher to remove. I think we've got a lot of people in surrounding counties, Minnesota being one of them, that, you know, Minnesota takes a lot of flack for snow removal, and I know that they've asked us down here what we do different, is just we go out early. We don't want that stuff to be pounded in, because it's harder to get off when it's packed into that road. So the earlier we go out, the easier it is to get off, but you've also got the timing of the storm and the wind and everything else. We do our best, I guess. I don't know what else we can do different with school closing.
I couldn't see where a bus couldn't get through any of those that I were on. And then you got the argument that, well, it's a bus, you got loaded kids, you don't want to go in the ditch. But I've been on that side too, worked for Charles City Schools, and we went out and looked at roads, and last thing you want to hear is a bus in the ditch.
Right.
Of course, you can't.
Well, and I remember being a kid, we were pushing buses because they were stuck in driveways. So, I mean, and that stuff doesn't fly anymore, don't get me wrong,
No.
but,
You can't live in a bubble all the time.
right. No, I agree with you. Well,
So I think you're doing
well, appreciate
nothing more you
that.
can do.
I- You know, when we get really bad storms, we try to just get one lane open, but even on some storms, if it's a struggle to keep the gravels open, we're just gonna focus on hard surface, just because it takes us a whole day to get through a gravel route. And it takes us, you know, we can go through a hard surface route twice a day, maybe sometimes 2.5 times, depending how bad snow's on a hard surface. So those are the main arterials of the county, so that's what we're gonna try to keep open. And there are times too when it's bad enough, we'll put motor graders on the hard surface, because that's just, we need to get people in and out. But, you know, you remember a couple of years ago where we were helping the state out because they couldn't get their plows out. So we were running the state roads just to help the sheriff out in that one blizzard we had a few years ago. So I wanna think we're doing as much as we can. If somebody's got any other suggestions, let me know, but.
I think you can't do any more.
I think you're doing a good job.
And I would suggest that, Mark, when they call you, that, I know what you're talking with Rich about with the roads and stuff, but they also you could direct them to the superintendent. Yeah, that's probably what I would, because, you aren't, Rich isn't calling school off, you know, and, I actually forgot about Bobby having that, so I don't, surgery, but, maybe, I'd rather have Barb tell the individual that it was just a call she made. Usually I think Bobby's been around so long that, if he thinks we can nip and tuck it, we'll nip and tuck it, and he'll kind of make the call, you know, but.
I didn't want to blow the guy off, and there were other things he was complaining about too, that was, that was his benefit.
Yeah. And I also questioned that too on Friday, you know, I just thought, but it is what it is, and
one of them has to stay home if they're in school.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, that was a short timeline between, at least for St. Ansgar, when they went from a 2-hour delay to a closing and then doing an e-learning day, and then people are just kind of
Yep.
up in arms. And obviously, they closed because of weather, and the weather affects the roads, so.
And I do have a meeting Thursday. The governor's making us go back to 5 days, so, next week we'll be going back, I think it's next week we'll be going back to the 5 days. Hopefully, I'm not sure.
St. Ansgar's always been kind of, we've always been 5 days, and then what they do with their snow days is their first snow day of the month is a snow day, but any other days after that, they're gonna do e-learning, which was what happened on Friday. They had Thursday as a snow day, Friday they did an e-learning day, but that message just kinda got, because it was a 2-hour late start, everybody was expected to have school. So the whole timing and the situation there was kinda different, so it was just a unique situation, but.
I didn't mean to spend.
Nope. So, I think that's all I got for updates, at least for secondary roads, but we do have on the agenda to discuss, the remaining engineering contracts for Hickory and Kirkwood, and those costs, and I think you guys got copies of those contracts. I've got Scott Sweet from WHKS here to explain to you the who, what, and why, and everything else, so if you got questions, I'll let you address his, you know. Did you want?
Yeah, I think I'd just like to, probably one of the first times I've been here and been able to talk, but I want to give a little background on WHPS and how we just determine, design fees and what's all included, so I'd like to do that again. I'm Scott Sweet, I'm the office manager for WHPS in our Mason City office. We've done a lot of work for the county, before bridges and roads, so I just wanted to introduce myself. I didn't get to say much last week, so and if you have any questions about WHS, please feel free to, to ask those too. Basically, when we're looking at a design project, we're looking at, how much is it going to be? We generally look at that as part of the cost of the project. We base on a percentage to get us in a rough idea, and then we basically go through and figure out the hours that it's going to take. So basically, the philosophy that I use is it's usually about 4% to 12% of a project cost is your engineering cost. Now that depends on, the size of the project, the type of work it is, how much of it's repeatable, so if you're doing an HMA overlay, that's probably gonna be no more towards your 4% cost because basically you're overlaying what's there. There's not a lot of engineering work that goes into that. We get into, let's say, like Kirkwood, which is 4.5 miles of, total reconstruction, widening, that's gonna be probably up towards your higher end. But then you also have to count in the repeatability of that. So basically what we have here today is an amendment to the original contract. The original contract was to do the topographic survey and the preliminary design work, which basically what we were looking at is, as far as that is, what can we do to the roadway surface or the roadway section to widen it out, sort of balance that against the right-of-way that we would need. I mean, we could go out there and make it 28-foot wide, put 4-1-4 slopes in on the ditches, and we push it out really, really wide. So really, what our preliminary design work was to sort of find that sweet spot between getting what we think we need as far as a typical section, roadway width, shoulder width, 4 slopes ditching, but then to try to also minimize the right-of-way taking because the majority of this is farmland. And then also, once we got into Totterville, we don't want to be taking people's yards, we don't want to be doing sidewalk work, we don't want to do anything more than we have to. So that was the original contract that we signed, and this amendment then is to basically do the final design, which we've been working on, which is my fault. We probably should have been having this discussion 6 months ago, eight months ago. But we continued on with our work, so when we were here last week, I said we were probably 95% done. We are. We just never had a contract to do that extra percentage that we did. So that's what we're here for. Preliminary engineering usually figures about 30 to 40% of the total design cost. So you know, that's what we sort of did the first contract for, was to get to that step, to be able to identify what we were gonna do as far as final design. So now that we're in the final design, this final design contract, pretty much includes all the final design, which would be the drainage. So you're looking at all the ditching, so that everything is maintained in the same drainage pattern. Culvert design, we're designing all the culverts. Intersections, we're doing the jointing, we're doing the edge profiles, we're doing the staking, the geometrics, all of that. As far as this project, using FM funds, there are certain requirements we have. One of the newer requirements is we need to have erosion control plan, which basically says where are we putting in silt fence, how are we maintaining all the water on the project site, how are we making sure soil isn't leaving, you know, at your culvert location, so we're putting in silt logs, perimeter silt logs, you know, 12 SAC along the road so that the water along with the soil is not leaving the project site. We're designing all the cross sections, we're looking at detours, that's the design portion. Then we also have to prepare the plans, which, you know, we need the title sheet, then we're looking at the notes that need to be put on there. We gotta have plan and profile, we've got all the cross section sheets, the intersection sheets, so basically all the sheets that puts the design that we did into the plans, so that we can give those to the contractor. And we also do all the quantities, we do all the notes, all the tabulations, so the contractor, you know, knows what we're working on. We also need right-of-way sheets so that the contractor knows where the right-of-way is, where can he go, where can he not go. Right, and then we get into, you know, meetings, coordination, that type of stuff, and then probably on this one, because we have JCG as a sub-consultant to WHKS, is we got to do the right-of-way work. So right-of-way work, because we are acquiring permanent easements, or, you know, basically an acquisition of somebody's property, you have to go out and you have to locate all the section corners, you have to go out and locate all the property lines, all the, you know, land corners, you know, for their properties, because we are actually legally buying property from them. You know, and I'll try to paraphrase what JCG does, because they're experts at the right of way. But they basically have to go out and find out who owns the property, legally find out who does that. So they have a right of way agent that goes to the courthouse, finds that, they have to find out if there are any liens on the property, because that entails who you're buying the property from, or if somebody has a claim on that property. Hopefully, usually we don't find that as a problem, but you have to check. Then they're gonna look at appraising or determining the compensation. They're gonna have to meet with all the landowners, they may have to meet with the tenants. So it's a very time-intensive process that they have to go through to do their work. We have approximately 4 parcels on Hickory that we need right-of-way from, because once we get into town, we're not getting any right-of-way, and we're not getting anything from the cemetery. We don't want, you know, we don't want to mess with the cemetery or properties in town. It's a little bit more complex, and we don't need that to be able to do the project the way we want it. I think there's 34 parcels on Kirkwood that I have to meet with those things and that. So basically, when I look back at their thing, they're charging about a little over $3,100 a parcel to be able to do their work, to get this all done. Now, they have to plan in their contract that they're gonna have to meet with every one of these people individually. We think that if we were to, say, beginning of March, have a meeting, get all the property owners to come to a public meeting, be able to explain the process, show them the impacts to their property. JCG should have the, you know, valuations done for all the parcels. We can get them all to sign at that time. So that would bring the cost down. They don't need to go out then and meet with every individual person. You know, we can get them all there. We've done that in several towns, Kelmer, Claremont, where we had these meetings, and we've had 50 to 70% of the people show up, and then they're willing to sign that night to get all that done. So that, if we can get that a part of the process, which I think I talked about last week, to have that big meeting, is that will cut down their time immensely. But they need to, when they do their contracts, they're going to assume they have to go out and meet individually with every person, because it's easier to say this is a not to exceed, process than to say, well, we think we can do it for this, and then come back and ask for more. It's much better to say, this is what it's gonna take. Hopefully, there are ways that we can then back that time off, and then we have a less expensive project for these projects, so. Trying to think, and the reason we have to use JCG is that we're using farm to market funds, which is Iowa DOT funds, so there are guidelines that they have to follow, just as well as what we have to follow. Rich is gonna have to sign off on the form that says that we did follow the proper legal, requirements and regulations to purchase the right of way. A lot of times on a smaller project we've done it, other times where we don't use JCG, because it's maybe one parcel. I think we did something at Stacyville where we had like maybe one or two where we were able to do that ourselves because we weren't really taking that much and the landowner was willing. But on this thing with 36 parcels with, owners and tenants, that's just what it takes. I went back and calculated as I started with, we're looking at, 4 to 12% of a project cost being the design. So when I put everything together, Hickory we were about 8% of the project for the total design cost. And that to me is about what I thought it should be, based on the size of the project, 3/4 of a mile. About $1 million, and we're gonna be sitting at about, right around $80,000, which is about, 8%. On Kirkwood, we're looking at a $5 million project, and our total fee is gonna end up right around a couple $100,000. Yeah, 186 plus the original design, which was about 56. So you're in the 225, so we're sitting around the 4 to 4.5%, 4.25% for the total, the comparison between the design and the construction. And like I said, the reason it's lower is because it's more repeatable. We're doing a longer stretch, but the typical section, the cross-sections are easier to do a longer stretch, but it just takes longer to do it because you've got 4.5 miles of ditching to do on both sides. You've got 20 culverts. You've got 50 entrances with entrance culverts that need to be due. And so there's a trade-off there, but I think we're coming in pretty good on, being in the 4 to 4.5% on that. So that's sort of where we're standing at. As I said, I should have done this, and it's my responsibility to have been here sooner to bring this to you so that you were up to date on that. But I think we're at a point where we needed to get this done, especially with bringing the right-of-way folks on now to get that part done. So that's sort of my short explanation of where we're at and how we got here, but I'm willing to answer any questions or provide any other information, that you need. Yeah.
I know a lot of the landowners are on that road and they're all on board with this.
And that's where I think if we can do that meeting.
You have 34 parcels, I know a couple guys that own a lot of those parcels,
Right.
so they're.
Yep. And each one as they're designated in the county as a parcel,
Yeah, they're separate.
they have to be separate because that's how they're legally defined as.
Yep, right. I mean, that's input I received from people.
Yeah.
So I think that'll go pretty smooth.
Yeah, and that's what we're thinking too, and they don't feel that, generally if you're gonna have an acquisition, I think they say it's gonna be over $25,000, then they may need to do an appraisal. But most of this is farmland, so they don't feel that they're gonna need to do any actual appraisals on any of the parcels. They're gonna, their methodology when I talked to them yesterday was, they're gonna try to establish a value per acre for all the farmland, and maybe a value per acre for all the homestead sites, and then apply those consistently throughout the corridor, so everybody is treated, what they feel is treated fairly in that. So that's their rationale, is they're gonna move through this, so. Any other?
You don't know what number they come at for a figure, do you?
No, when we talked about it in generalities, they're thinking probably, and same as what I thought, we're looking at 8 to 10,000 probably an acre. I mean, I think we said we had 8.5 acres, you know, we're roughly right around 8.5 acres. So you're looking at, I think conservative $100,000 is gonna be the cost, I think that we mentioned last week.
Rich, did you come up with any ideas as far as, do we still have enough money, or do we have to borrow money?
So, looking at where we're at now with the farm market fund and what the projects we think are gonna cost, and these are with the estimates that were the check plan estimates. We've talked about cutting subdrain out, changing aggregates, things like that. But using the check plan estimates, by the May letting, we should have about 5.5 million in our farm to market account to borrow ahead to. And you take out the estimate for Hickory, you take out the estimate for Kirkwood, we're at about 645,000 that we have to spend back to the farm to market account. Add in any sort of right of way at $100,000 and the remaining engineering. I think if you guys wanted to borrow $1 million of TIF to finish this project, that's what it would probably take. And 645,000 goes to the farm to market account because we're borrowed 3 years beyond, and then the rest of it would take care of the land acquisition and the rest of the engineering. So, and that's using those other estimates. I mean, it could be a lot less if we get favorable pricing, and if the subdrain we pull out, you know, we're looking at probably needing less than $1 million.
Yeah.
But we just don't know what bidding's gonna be like this late in the season, so it's conservative to say about $1 million.
And you're gonna do like a 2-year, you know, option.
We gotta be pretty, I think we gotta be pretty flexible with the construction,
Right, yeah.
the construction schedule.
If I can get better business.
I mean, if our plan is, staging wise, is to set it up as a 2-year contract. The contractor may come in and say, hey, I don't wanna do anything this year, but I can get it all done next year. I mean, I think, you know, as long as it's a good price, that would be something that we would consider, and something that we would probably recommend that the board consider. I mean,
So if it goes out another year, you'll have more funds available too, correct?
Well, they look at it from the standpoint of when the project is let, and not how long the project drags out, because that money still comes out of farm to market. So what they look at, and I don't know that for sure, because if we're not drawing from it, maybe they look at it from that standpoint, but remember also that we have projects coming up also in the next few years that are still gonna require farm to market funding, and we'll probably have to borrow. So just keep that in mind too, that even though we're gonna be getting money in, we're borrowed ahead, and there's other projects in the queue that need money too.
Didn't we have some money coming in from the windmill? Didn't they, cause we broke up the roads, didn't they give you some money for?
Yeah, we used some of that on, we used quite a bit of that on patching back what they hit.
Like what, 600,000?
I don't remember what that was now.
It was a pretty good chunk,
Yeah. I'd have to look again, but that money gets absorbed, but.
Well, I'm gonna propose something because I can't support what we're doing here, so I wanna shift gears on this. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. The engineer simply wanted to get started to widen our roads to 24 feet, which is a good thing. WHKS did nothing wrong because they pretty much designed something that the engineer wanted to do, so this is not on them. But it reaches a point where I can't justify spending this much money on a road that has 250 cars a day. It's a poor use of taxpayers' money. We can use some examples. You can look at east of New Haven, and that's a perfect example where we redid a road in a 66-foot right-of-way, and it's a nice road, and there's nothing wrong with it. I want to improve these roads. Not that I don't want to do them, but I don't want to do it the way we're doing it because it's ridiculously over expensive. I'll give you some numbers. South of St. Ansgar, what we were going to do, there was an 8-inch concrete overlay. That comes to $358,000 a mile to do that road. Per mile, $358,000. I did all the numbers as far as what they proposed. Rich has lightened up the project with the culverts and all that type of stuff. To do these two projects, we're spending $1.17 million per mile to do these roads. That's ridiculous. And they only have 250 cars a day. South of St. Ansgar had 1,200 cars a day. These have a fifth of the traffic, and we're spending $1.17 million a mile on them. That's ridiculous. Now, I'm I'm not gonna support that, so I wanna shift gears. I would like them redesigned, build them within 66-foot right of way. We basically have no dirt work. We can look at the culverts that need to be replaced, replace them as you need to have them replaced. You can still do a 22-foot road on it. It's gonna be a little bit of a design type of thing to make that happen. I have ideas how you can do it, and I'm sure you do also. So we can improve that road and save big dollars.
And we gotta look at the standards between the 3R project and the reconstruction project and the requirements there too. I mean, there's some different requirements in 3R. And what I'll say is the direction from the previous board was this is the direction they wanted those roads to be taken in. So I was following direction of the other boards as far as they wanted these roads wider, and to widen them out, we need better right of way if we're gonna go as wide as we are, just like Jim had mentioned. If we're gonna widen to 24 feet and then add shoulders to it, we don't have a lot of 24-foot wide roads with wide shoulders on it. It takes right of way to do that. So that was what we were doing, was taking, I took the direction of the board previously, and there were no concerns with widening it. So I'm just repeating what you had said. We can redesign anything you want. We've got a lot of money invested in these roads now, so as far as.
We have two roads that are 24-foot roads. One of them is south of Statesville, and I believe 105 is, I think, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I gotta remember now. That one's goofy. 105
So-
in general is goofy between
so-
the two counties.
All of our roads are 22-foot roads, and we're gonna build this one as a 24-foot road. On the south end, it's a 22-foot road that leads to it. On the state line, it's a 22-foot road up there, but we're gonna have a 24-foot road in the middle. This road starts at a rural intersection and ends at a rural intersection. It does not go through a town, and we're spending $1.17 million on it. It has 250 cars a day. It's not adding up for common sense, and
Why wasn't this brought up before, like last
It-
week?
I did, but it was not listed.
Nobody talked about the footage, I mean, I just assumed 24 foot was a standard road. the way-
It can be a typical standard roadway width, but like I said, the board prior
Ask
to,
questions.
Yeah, well, when you say it's a 24-foot road, and it needs to be widened, I assume that's what roads are. I don't know how to measure any roads.
with as big as equipment is traveling on here, a 24-foot road is a pretty, it's a decent sized road for as big as the equipment that's running on them now. It gives a lot of people a lot more room. The existing road route is 20 feet.
Right. And 20 feet is too narrow.
I agree with that, yes.
Yeah.
But the cost, and we can make it a 22, and drive east to New Haven, that's a good example of it. There have been some shallow ditch issues with it, I will totally say that, but it works. It's a nice road. We can do it a lot cheaper than this. And it's no fault of you two guys, I'm not pointing fingers, but it comes down to when there's money involved, that's when we're involved, and I can't spend that kind of money on that.
The road is currently 20 foot?
Yeah, it's 20-foot wide road, and I don't know if some spots have a foot of shoulder, maybe 2 at the most, if we're lucky.
They do, yeah, I kind of looked at it.
The standards for a road with 200 feet through ASHTO design standards, the minimum roadway width that you drive on is 20 feet. So it meets the minimum standards, but according to what I've been told and what the board wanted was they didn't want a 20-foot wide road, they wanted a wider road with more shoulders. So,
22 foot would be wider.
right, but then you gotta add shoulders to it.
So with a less traffic count, could you go 22-foot asphalt?
Depending on the construction side, I don't know if you're gonna look at structural numbers as far as design goes, if you're looking at structural numbers for 7 inches of concrete versus, you're probably gonna look at 9 inches of asphalt if you want the same structure comparison.
'Cause I'm not a believer, but I'm not too keen on asphalt or cement. I can't see where it's held up.
I like it.
You're driving north of Stacyville?
I drove
You're
over.
looking at, you're comparing an overlay
Yeah.
to a full reconstructed,
Right.
full depth concrete, and there's a difference.
We've had overlaid cement over cement that haven't held up.
There's asphalt constructability that's very good asphalt roads. Rudd Road and North Springs Road are examples of the hold in place. Put a 10 million diesel design mix on them. They're fantastic roads and they're holding up good. But they're not holding up as good as the same concrete roads we did in '09 when those were done. So your longevity, your concrete's gonna be much better. There has been some issues with them, but there's also a lot of concrete roads that are doing quite well that's just an argument that you.
We can design it for whatever the board wants. Like I said, the board prior to you guys wanted concrete out there, so this is the direction we took. I mean,
We've had concrete, and then as soon as the contractor leaves, a year later, secondary roads are going out there to patch them.
You're bringing up Primrose?
Yes.
Yes.
And north of Statesville, that was less than 5 years old, and that's,
Yep.
how many spots are there that, and then secondary roads gotta go out.
And I think I kind of maybe covered that last week on what we think is happening out there on those roads.
We need to stick with what, as far as, we can decide on what we're gonna do it with, but I think we need to stay with what's
I
on the
have no
agenda.
problem with the 22-foot road, because it still gives them a foot wider on each side, what it is now.
If you have a little shoulder there with it, yeah,
And
I would have, I just thought we had to do 24, you know.
No, but that's,
Presented as a 22.
like I said, that was the direction I was taking from prior.
Yeah.
And Mike, I did too, until I talked with Rich,
Okay.
and then he kinda,
Okay.
I thought too, though, that's just what
That's
it's
the norm,
going to,
yeah.
but that, when he told me it was the previous board, I look at a 22-foot road, I help a friend he's got a 790 combine duals, and I run a 1100 bushel grain cart with 4 wheels all the way around, and we've never had an issue. We may have to pull in a farm drive or something, but how much bigger are they gonna get?
Well, and that's the consideration of the large, you know, when these roads were built years and years ago, we didn't have this big of equipment on them,
Correct.
that wide of equipment on them. We're getting wider equipment. The thought process back when we were in conception here, in the inception of the project, is that 24-foot wide road is a pretty decent standard sized road for wide body vehicles, and so let's target a 24-foot wide road with some decent shoulders so that the people have some room to let other traffic through.
well, with a 22-foot road south and a 22-foot road north, I guess I don't see a problem with 22-foot.
No, I don't either. I, like I said,
With changing plans, is that gonna get us out of
Get us out of the red.
season?
I think with as much, gonna be up to Scott here to kind of answer that one, it's gonna get us. Now,
Let me do some ciphering here.
but if we're gonna allow them to pave it next season anyway, we'd be in an off cycle for a letting. I mean, maybe we're pushing the letting back into June or July now, but if we're still gonna let them work through 2 seasons, then we still, I don't know, Scott.
Right, well, I mean, I think, this is sort of our philosophy. When I say I mean, everybody that's working for me on this. Of course, we can get it done. The one thing is, if you're deciding that if you wanna get the right of way, then we're still looking May, June, you know, because it just takes that time. If we're looking at trying to build it within the 66 feet that we have, and we don't need to buy right of way, that takes, you know, because right of way is gonna take 2 to 3 months. Typical, you know, I asked JCG to get it done in 2, and they thought they could do that, but usually it takes them at least 3. I mean, we can get it, let's see, so I'm thinking if we do May, looking at March, we have about exactly 1 month to get it done. Get it turned in to meet their schedule, I do believe, get a May, to hit their check plans, but we've already done a lot of the check plans. This will be a lot of changes.
So I'll intervene also. I like your firm, and so don't take this wrong, but I designed all of the paving projects since 2003, except for 2 paving projects that we've done. And this is not something that we need to have a consultant do. This is something that can be done in our engineer's office ourselves. So I hate to cut you out of it, but
No,
it's another expense that I don't think we need. I mean, I've done it, so I know it can
Right,
be done.
and the difference between these is if it's a reconstruction, getting better horizontal, vertical curves based on the new traffic standards and everything else, there's a difference there, and I'm not arguing with you on
Okay.
that, but that's why,
Okay.
you know, you look at it, you start looking at cuts and fills and where dirt needs to get a better horizontal, vertical curves. I think that's what a lot of the design was, is getting getting better, you know, because it was a gravel road before with probably an old standard in it for gravel. Now you're putting, you know, you're gonna design it as a better highway than what was there, because I don't think it really was designed when it was paved the first time. It was just put something on top to control dust. So when you go back through and you look at what the design standards are for horizontal and vertical curves and things like that, there's more dirt moving around than to just, you know, and a lot of the other stuff we did, we had, the roads we've done in the past with the overlays have been already designed farm to market roads. They weren't gravel with a surface on them, at least most of them weren't, that I can recall. But, and then we were adding dirt for just widening shoulders to give us more shoulder width. We weren't putting any structure on top of that added dirt. So the difference with widening out Kirkwood and Hickory is now there's a potential to be putting a structure on top of a fill. We want to get it wide enough so that we don't have, you know, if we're going to narrow it back up, then we're still going to have the potential for putting structure on top of some fill shoulder that gives you the opportunity, that gives the whether it's asphalt or concrete, you could end up getting some edge sloughing and getting cracking on that edge, and that edge deteriorates because you need some edge support. So there's a lot of things we can look at it. I guess there's another method, there's other methods out there. It just, we picked one and went with it based on what was needed, so.
I'll accept that, okay.
Yeah. Can you make it thicker where that is gonna be?
Well, you can, but I still think you're on top of a fill.
Right,
and,
right, yeah, correct, yeah.
And where you've got, if you're with concrete, where you've got a differential in thicknesses, you're gonna get a crack there regardless, just
Yeah.
because of the path of least resistance.
Yep.
You can asphalt, you know, you're still, there's some things going on with the way the materials react.
So by going to 22, do you need right away from,
We'd have to look at that again and make sure. I mean,
you know?
you wanna have, you know, when you do a reconstruction, you're looking at meeting the required standards of a 3-to-1 side slope, 4 slope. So when you take what we have out there and you put the 3-to-1 to it and you want some sort of a ditch for clear zone, with what we had, you're talking about pulling it in a foot on each side, or a foot on each side now.
Yeah.
They're 2 feet on each side, I guess, 124.
You're gonna lose.
You're gonna bring a foot on each side in, so yeah, you're sucking that in a little bit. You still might encroach the back slopes. Maybe they can be steepened up. I don't, you know, without worrying, you know. I don't know if we need design exceptions for steeper back slopes now. Or,
Yeah, you probably would need a design exception.
Give average just 2-to-1 on the back slope?
I'd have to look back at the design standards to see if that's acceptable or not.
I don't think, I mean, without a design exception, it wouldn't be.
Okay.
So you'd have to have a design exception, but that's, you know, they're not difficult to get, it does take some work to do. You're gonna have to do a benefit cost ratio, you know, look at the accidents that happened out along that road, you know, is that a feature that you have? And you may have to do a design exception anyway, because you may not have the clear zone that they're gonna require, because if you're now narrowed it another foot, and, you know, you can use your shoulder, you know, because what we were using was 11-foot lane, we were gonna paint it at 11 foot, so you had basically a 1-foot paved shoulder. But you could use that 1 foot as part of your clear zone, so you need so much clear zone so you can count, you can't count the 3-to-1 slope as part of your clear zone. It's traversable, but it's not recoverable, which is the definition there. So you can use your ditch width at the bottom, but then if you know, let's say we can get that to stay at 5 foot, you may be looking at 8, you maybe need 10 foot, you know, so then you're requiring 10 foot, you need another, so that's why you can't use the back slope as part of your clear zone. So in most of this, it's a farm field, so you don't probably have a lot of stuff outside the right of way. I think you could probably qualify for a design exception. It's just going through the paperwork and doing all that.
So it could maybe be done without.
Yeah, but you would need a design exception. That had to be approved by local systems, you know, as far as that goes.
But then south of Torville, that's a pretty steep ditch. If you build that out, you don't have no ditch then, would you?
Probably not.
So you'd have to buy right away there probably?
Yeah, I guess I haven't looked at it that close lately, but
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the cross sections that were
And then
developed.
again, if you're looking at it, is the ground coming towards the road? So you can sort of use what we would call a toe ditch. Basically, you come down and you don't put a ditch that's gonna, everything that's draining to the road will hit that toe ditch and go down to I'm assuming you're talking about where the triple culvert is in that area. Yeah, so that it would flow down that way. You could, possibly look at a toe ditch where you're not, if it's steep enough, you have enough fall, you have enough capacity within the right of way yet, that you could possibly get by without having to cut a ditch with a back slope. I mean, it would just be something we have to look at.
Then that takes away your snow removal too, if you fill the ditch in.
And that's another thing, what do you have for drifting? Do you have drifting problems out along these roads, any place like that? And maybe you do something different in that location.
Talking about by Torville.
No, I don't think not by Torville, it's blocked in the north.
So, that's probably not a.
So we need to make a motion as far as to prove that, or we just,
I guess it's up to the board to decide whether we wanna continue with what we've got out here, or do we continue with, do we narrow the road up and get some savings with the concrete that way and continue with the right of way? I guess I wanna know where we're at too. I mean, what options do you wanna look at?
I would say if the other roads are 22, there's no reason this one can't be either, It's still gonna be an improvement over what's there and it'll serve its purpose. If it has a shoulder of some type. So,
How do you want to have this motion made, Rich, so that it is legit for you?
I wanna know where you guys wanna take
Because
it.
you talked about
Do-
so many
do-
variables
do-
with the ditch
Do
and.
you wanna keep the project the way it is now and narrow up the pavement to 22 versus 24? That's a simple, let's proceed with the way we're going and get the project done. Or Jim's proposal is, let's axe the projects all together and do a complete redesign of, I'm not gonna try to put words in your mouth, but I think I'm following you, is throw them both out and do something that we can try to do in-house and try to figure out some different methods to get us a road, but it's gonna be some challenges as far as, first of all, we won't let them this year. I mean, to try to redesign everything and get it letting through this year and do all that work, and I don't see where that's even gonna be possible.
what if we table this as far as this actual number item, but we have consensus of the board as far as the direction we wanna go, we want a 22-foot road, we wanna see what you guys can build for us without having to buy right away
Okay,
for a 22-foot road.
So basically, Todd, 22 foot, you be happy?
Oh, absolutely.
Marv?
Well, we're gonna be getting in there next year though, then now.
Yep. Well, we were gonna kind of be in there anyway as far as construction timeline, the way things were setting, but we can look at it this week and find out, obviously bringing down the concrete, narrowing the concrete road up is gonna give us some cost savings material-wise, possibly dirt-wise, bringing in a foot on each side.
all your culverts still need replaced too?
Well, everything's full of snow now, it's hard to say. I don't know if they did a good inspection on them, or if you just looked at, I know we did some lining on a couple of
I
them.
think the ones by the tracks were lined, I thought, so, they should.
If anything, they
I'd
need
like to have some
extension.
eyes on them, not my eyes,
Right,
but I would like
right.
some eyes on them to see, well, there's nothing wrong with this, why are we replacing it?
But because of the excavation and the widening and things like that, that's the reason we put new culverts in, was if we're putting new on top, let's put new everything underneath so that everything lasts us as long. And obviously, I asked WHKS to look at whether we use corrugated pipe versus concrete pipe, because these are low clearance pipes, and concrete can bridge a lot of weight versus corrugated pipe, and concrete's not gonna rot out near as quick as corrugated pipe. So that's why we've got that type of pipe system in there too, is concrete pipe under the road lasts longer, but it's more expensive. So we can find some cost savings there too if we want. I just caution that,
I'm not proposing a piece of junk out there.
No,
I'm not going there at all.
so.
I'm just trying to trim things to be reasonable.
I thought maybe some of the culverts had been replaced, and maybe the length is what I was thinking was maybe the issue why you're gonna replace them now. But
Mike, you've talked with people have been talking to you about these roads.
Yeah.
Anybody mention anything about drainage? Things
No.
flowing good?
No, I never have, no.
So, I mean,
But,
you
yeah, you don't
take
want to
that,
rust the old culvert in the road.
Right, but you don't wanna, you don't wanna have a concrete or a culvert out there now that, you know, that we don't replace. I mean, obviously we replace anything that's bad, but if you keep it in there and maybe 5 years down the road, it looks good now, and maybe 5, 6 years down the road, it all of a sudden becomes junk. Now you've got something underneath that's no, I mean, if you keep everything fresh, I mean, there are so many ways here to do this that, you know, we picked one and went with it, and now we're having some second thoughts, it sounds like, as to where we wanna take it, so.
Well, I would think you would wanna replace crossroad pipe, period. You
Mhm.
know, if they've got some age on them, that's a no-brainer.
Is there a way to go price on concrete versus asphalt, or is that tough to do?
We can price that.
Yeah, we go, but I also think one of the things that you need to do when you're looking at concrete versus asphalt is we shouldn't just look, and when I say we, I include all of us in this because I don't live in Mitchell County, but I wanna make sure that we're being fiscally responsible, is not to just look at the upfront cost. You need to look at the total life cycle cost, because with an asphalt road, you're gonna be looking at, you know, a certain type of maintenance every, 7 years. You're gonna go out there, seal the cracks, do this. Concrete has its own, recommended rehabilitation or savings payment things for this life, so we're probably, should look at like a 50-year life cycle, because that's usually what we do. Concrete lasts 50 years, so they draw everything out between the asphalt and that. So it's gonna look at the same structural number, which is, we have 7 inches of concrete, we'll figure out what we would need for an asphalt. You're probably, like Rich said, you're probably looking at 9 inches.
So 9 inches are gonna either raise the pavement higher, or we gotta cut deeper and
Yeah.
to get the same cross section, the same slopes and everything else. I mean, there's a lot going on here that is, and Jim understands that, I know you do, I'm just.
Because, we don't want to raise the profile any, because that just kicks us out. So we're going to keep it, we have where it is now, where it's going to be a little bit lower. So you're going to have an extra 2 inches of removals. So those are all things that it's just not going to be, I'm trying to say, it's just not going to be the upfront cost of the difference between the concrete and the asphalt. I think it needs
So we
to
can
be-
give you the numbers of the equivalent structure thickness between the two, and that'll, and we don't know what oil prices are gonna do, but.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest concern that I have, is when you're year to year, that's gonna be a variable that, is could help or it could hurt, but, usually it doesn't help much. It's been pretty constant the last 2 or 3 years for the price of oil, but if we knew what was gonna happen next year with the price of oil, we'd all be buying a little bit of,
You won't be sitting here.
we'd buy us a little bit of stock in an oil company.
I have a question on that, kind of piggyback there. Basically, what we do on one, we're gonna do on the other.
I think that would make sense. I think that makes sense to keep the projects consistent.
This Hickory, 3/4 of a mile, we're gonna get charged crazy just for the company to come in and do it that small.
Yeah.
If we go with the different.
When you look at how the projects are estimated, you look at, and there's no difference. You look at, we can, what I think is gonna happen if we go with the way we are, we bid these projects together, we're gonna see a cost savings just based on pure volume. Hickory's got some different bid items than Kirkwood does it, because you're getting into town and there's some other things that are going on there, but when they look at the projects as combined, we might see some really good cost savings on both sides, because they've got 2 projects that create one big one that they can see some efficiencies in. Your mold cost, you got a mold cost just for Hickory versus just for Kirkwood, but somewhere in the middle there's probably gonna be an overlap of mold costs. You're not gonna see the same type, but when you estimate projects, you wanna estimate them individually. First of all, we're conservative as engineers that way. We wanna give you the worst case scenario and then hope that heck we see a lot of savings and everybody's happy, but you're gonna probably see that, because I was looking at the numbers too, with what was submitted, same bid items for Hickory versus Kirkwood. Some are jacked higher because there's less quantity. There's always that savings in volume. And so, when you look at that, I think it would make sense to not introduce a different, because if you bid on the same, if you bid one concrete, one asphalt, and you tie them together, now you got 2 different prime contractors most likely that you're gonna deal with on the projects, and then you've got scheduling, things like that you gotta deal with. If you keep them the same, whether you keep them both asphalt or both concrete, at least you're dealing with one prime contractor. And that's not saying you couldn't have one prime contractor, but now you got another subcontractor that you gotta schedule and timing with too. so.
Are you going to the tracks in Totterville?
We're going just north of the elevator, beyond the tracks to get past that
So,
entrance.
I didn't see railroad insurance on either one of the bid tabs or the
Yeah,
estimates.
yeah, we need to add that in.
Yeah.
So it's not there, but you.
Right.
Yeah, we went through some things that we need to add to the
All right.
contract, yeah.
Okay.
Question about the railroad, those arms that they put on railroad crossings, is that a county thing, or is that the?
No, there's money out there for railroad improvements, and the DOT each year comes out with, they know each crossing in each county, and they've got some cost-benefit ratio that they put out, and then there's some special funding for that counties or railroads can request from the DOT to get funding for. I don't think there's a crossing in our counties that meet the cost-benefit ratio that we would qualify for funding. I'm not gonna say that it's not possible, because, but to put arms down, that's more expensive than just adding lights, or, you know, you go from signs to lights to, you know, that's the echelon of expense for railroad crossings, and so there's funding out there, but it'll have to be a combination, because it's railroad right-of-way, it's their crossing. If you wanna, I mean, the railroads say, yeah, if you wanna pay for those crossings, we'll put them in, they have no problem with us paying for it, but depending, and they'll look at crashes and things like that at those intersections. I'm gonna guess there's not any crashes at those intersections to warrant. That's why the cost benefit ratios are so low that they wouldn't qualify for any funding. But my guess is you're asking whether we can put those in, or
I didn't know whose responsibility that was, or who called the railroad.
a lot of times we wait for the railroad because they're the ones that deal with the accidents on there. And I mean, even in Carpenter, I've written an email to the letter to the railroad there telling them the crossings are settled, you guys need to come fix these, but of course, I don't like bashing people, but the railroad sometimes is difficult to work with and get a response out of them. And so, you know, we get the flack for having a rough crossing because it's our road going over it, but in that reality, our roads don't usually rise, usually things sink. So, we could request that from the railroad, they might just look at us and just laugh at us, but, those are safety things, but there's funding out there for it, there's just not a lot of it out there to qualify. And it's usually, I think, if I understand correctly, the way that funding is and the way the railroads are, there's like 10 or 15 years borrowed ahead for crossing safety in the state. So I wouldn't expect that we would get any funding for it. At least that's the way it was a few years ago. They were so far behind in funding that stuff that it was almost ridiculous that they were even still doing them. But
We're still left off with the direction of what we want to go.
Make a motion to table it for next week till we get some prices.
okay, so
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Hearing none, this has been tabled for a week.
So I want to be clear with what you guys are expecting. Then we can get you some asphalt prices for the same for similar cross section structural numbers at a 22-foot wide road, correct?
Yes.
And the desire to not purchase any right of way.
Okay.
If you get it to work.
All right. And then that would probably, if we did it that way, we would maybe need to request design exceptions.
Yep, I got design for what we would need them for, maybe Rich can, or I can send you the
We'll work on it this week
process.
and we'll get something to you.
process.
Is
Sorry.
a week long enough, or?
I would like two, actually.
Oh, because you won't be here
That's okay.
Is that all right?
next. 2 weeks?
Do we need to change that?
We amend them.
You got
Is that gonna throw a wrench into everything?
Not for me, it won't.
Okay.
Do we need to amend that motion, or we just,
Well,
We all voted
I'll
on it.
re-motion, what do you do?
You can just rescind the motion and do another one if you want, I guess.
I'll resend that.
I'll make a motion that we table this for 2 weeks and wait for design numbers from
Okay.
our engineering department.
I'll second that.
okay, so this is basically the same, other than it's 2 weeks later, or 2 weeks from now.
Correct.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none. We have a new motion here for 2 weeks.
And I'll add one thing. I haven't pulled foothill yet, just in case something happens. I can pull it. I know you guys wanted to, but I'm gonna do it I'm just leaving it there for now, just in case. I
How
mean,
long do you have until, what's?
I have until the
what's
day
date?
before the letting technically to pull that project, so I've got until the second week in March, I think it is, the second
Yeah,
Tuesday.
second
So,
Tuesday.
I know you want it pulled, but I'm just, and I'll pull it, but I'm leaving it there, cause if I pull it, I don't wanna have to call and put it back in, so. It's just kind of,
So we can listen to these numbers in a couple of weeks, and then we can maybe.
if you guys
have an
say,
idea where we're at.
forget about it, and then we can, I'm leaving the options open, even though you guys have a direction already. But just something, kind of insurance policy in the back pocket in case something were to,
Sure.
so,
Okay.
alright.
I have a suggestion too, like, any project in the future, you know, maybe we should be given all these options.
Well,
You know what I mean? Instead of going on.
we've got a new way of doing things here. We're all gonna have to get used to how we're gonna handle this, but you're right, yep.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
so, right now, you have anything else for us then?
I can't think of anything else.
Okay. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
And we will move on. David was here and he's walked away, so we will leave 6, we will go down to number 7. And this is discussion and possible action on creating the position of Economic Development Director to work with the Economic Development Commission. And I guess this is basically just to kill it, so.
I move that we do not create a new position as, for the Economic Development Director to work, for Mitchell County.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Well, let's see, we have a motion and we have a second, and I suppose
Discussion.
we probably want to do a roll call on this.
Discussion, please, Steve.
Yeah, let's have a discussion, that's right, I've got something that I keep forgetting. Yes, let's have a discussion on it. I brought this to our attention here a month ago. At the time, it was possible that had we took the director under our wing, I thought maybe we would be able to have a little more say-so in how some of the monies were spent. And I since found out that we didn't need to have him under our wing. We have control of that money if we ever gave money to economic development. So, my opinion is, we don't want nothing to do with the director with economic development. So, that's, at the time, I thought that was a good idea, and it probably was. With not understanding the fact that we did have the power, we just weren't getting it like we should have. So, anyways, that's my discussion on it.
I have nothing to add. I mean, you made the motion and it's been seconded, so that, because that's,
I'll agree. I mean, I think we should leave it.
Yeah,
Leave it where
it's
it's at.
something that,
We all know that Tony's resigning, so, I do have a meeting with Economic Development, it's supposed to be this week, and to talk about this, I guess, so, we'll have to obviously have a replacement, so, and I'm guessing that I'll have to be posted for the job and stuff, so, just, that was gonna be kind of in my meetings attended, I was gonna talk, but being we're on that, you know, we're definitely gonna have to replace Tony here, so we'll go from there.
yeah. Anyways, no further discussion. Jim made a motion, Todd seconded.
Roll call.
We better do a roll call on this one. Todd,
Yes.
I guess
Yeah.
probably the way I made the motion. I made a motion that we do not create an economic development director to work under Mitchell County.
So, it would be a yay, right?
It would be a yay, okay. Okay. Todd has made a motion, yay. Mark?
Yay.
Mark has motioned yay. Jim?
Aye.
Aye. Mike?
Aye.
Smollett, aye. I'm sorry, I misunderstood how you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I worded it kind of goofy, I'm sorry, but. that's-
Yeah. I realize at this stated time, it was best to leave it alone. Anyways, David is back, so we will have David come up here and give us information on the proposed building.
Well, keep it short and sweet. This guy, I was online trying to find some software to draw stuff, and I just wanted to figure out how to log into his website, and him being a good salesman, he said, I'll just do it for you. You know, and, you know, it's pretty simple, 4 walls and but I know it looks big, and I don't know if you guys saw this. I'm not real articulate. I'm gonna forget half of what I need to tell you here, but anyway, I think the other really big need is we're gonna need a test site, we're gonna need a place to drive through and give shots. That's why those doors are the way they are.
Okay.
You know,
Let's say if we ever need it.
well, wouldn't that be great? Never need it.
I have one question, I was just wondering about the sidewalls, do they need to be that high? I mean, you have.
Well, for Chris's trailers, yes.
Okay. Perfect.
And that's probably a point for debate, but he has had water damage with his trailers setting out before.
Who trailers? The
Emergency management,
Okay,
sorry,
yep,
yeah.
yep, sorry, yep, yeah. Okay.
And it's kind of a preparedness thing, if they're out there throws down to the ground.
No, I didn't realize what was going in.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fine.
You know, so there was some thought put into this, you know.
Okay, yeah,
And again, I'm gonna encourage you to talk to the other, because it's not just my department, it needs,
Right.
it has needs.
I had a public health meeting, and they're renting 2-story units currently right now, that their stuff could go in there.
Yes.
Or at the fire hall, that could go in there.
That would
So
be
they-
so much
they
more
all right there.
convenient for them.
Yeah, no, they were ready, told me that.
And you, I think you could tell us too, that like, you told me you are renting other areas too, right?
Where the generator used to be, yeah, I was unaware, I'm not sure if they had 2 more as a result of this, I'd have to talk to them.
Yeah, they told me
Again,
they got stuff stored.
this
all
may
over.
be a meeting unto its own at some point,
Yeah.
when the time comes.
Yeah, they told me they rent 2-story units, and they have stuff in the upstairs of the gowns and masks and stuff in the fire hall, because they don't know where to put them.
And there's an office over there, I don't know if the state will ever want it again, yeah, they've got one office in that building that, you know, it's being used for storage. Should be used for an office, probably, because they're always short of office space.
Will this take up the whole lot?
No, it's,
80 foot.
the site plan, I wish I'd have done better on that, but, it is gonna crowd the motorcycle test area a little bit, but they want 20-foot of runout for that, if we go this big. You know, it's all very much subject to changes, whatever you guys,
I think if it's not taking up the whole lot, go bigger to take up the whole lot,
might as well use the space you got.
You're gonna have to mow the grass.
Yeah,
The
well, originally, this area was, they were thinking overflow parking for the courthouse.
No.
At some point, it's kind of like they bought the lot, but,
And-
you know, that was before my time.
Also, if we hit that $100,000 threshold, we have to add,
Go with the bid process. And,
well, yeah, you gotta go with the bid process, but then we gotta have, like, the WHKS fella, what do you call him?
licensed engineer.
These
An
have
engineer.
engineer stamps on the design. I don't know if that helps or not. That's what he said, that's all beyond me.
And that, some of that, we'll have to discuss all that. I do have just a couple of comments. Well, one is, I know when we did the county shop, doors are expensive, and so what we did out there was more or less one door in and one door out. That doesn't necessarily mean that has to happen here, but it saves a lot of expense. And I was thinking about this last night. I talked with Dave yesterday, and when we first started this, I was just thinking of Dave and his maintenance thing. I wasn't thinking of any of these other departments, and he mentioned to me as far as other people that need it, as far as EMS, home health, even Mark Ross with the zoning, so I wasn't aware that there was more need yesterday. And Rachel, we put 100 or 150,000 in for this building, do you recall, or?
I think we did 100.
It is
Okay.
100.
So I was thinking last night when I went to the supervisors meeting thing, virtual, they had talked about CARES Act money that they're gonna be sending to all the counties. It's $17 million, and if you divide that by 99 counties, comes to, I just did the math, I think it's $171,000 a county, if that's what they do. I don't know if it's gonna be based on population, but at any rate, it already might be in the treasurer's fund now. It was supposed to come last week. And they said we can use it however we want to do it, but they recommended that we use it somewhat having to do with how COVID has affected us. Now, home health, they're renting buildings, 2-storage buildings. To me, that some of that money justifies going to this building because they don't have to rent buildings, they have it here. EMS, he's got 2 trailers. He doesn't have to have the county shop sitting outside. He's got it here. So it's preparing us for the future for something like this that happens. So long story short, there probably is some more money that we could probably use to pay for this thing, plus what we've already budgeted.
And Chris also is going to give us a fee for rent
Okay.
for his trailers. And down the road, he's gonna.
Now, this is just a shell. There's no electrical in this thing. There's no plumbing in this thing. It's not insulated, it's not heated. There's no concrete approaches outside, getting in and out of it. So when you see this $85,000, everybody needs to remember that, I think that's what it was. That's a shell. You're gonna stick, I don't know, I'm sure you probably stick that again into it when you start doing things to it, to get it where we want it.
But this is just one contractor, isn't it?
Right, there could be, again, anybody.
I think
We
we
don't,
should put it up for a bid in the county, shall we? Local contractors?
If it's $100,000, you gotta have a licensed engineer do it. If you have, what was it, competitive quotes, if it's under $67,000, well, this will be over that. But this also does state as far as, exceptions that can be made, and I don't know, exceptions for competitive bids and quotations. Without getting into all those sections of the code, I have no idea what those are, and that's something a lawyer probably might have to figure that out.
Mark Walk has to look at it. Again, and David, remember when I started, you gotta have a sewer, and you gotta have a toilet, and all this. But the more we started realizing this is gonna get expensive, we were gonna hit that $100,000 threshold. This was a way for us to stay under that, and then next year, we can do some more cement work, some insulating. This was to stay under that. But again,
Just get a basic storage for now, and then.
yeah, right now, we're just starting. Like I told Dave, because Dave says, I don't really need that sewer and water, but it'd be nice if you smashed his finger or something that you had someplace in.
I guess I look at it as 90% of this could be cold storage, but
Yeah,
I think he needs to have a place that he can pull his pickup in and it plows out. A place needs to go to the bathroom. You don't need a fancy bathroom, but wash your hands in a laundry tub and go to, you can have the bathroom and, I think there's some basic things that's gonna make his job easier that probably should be in here, that's my thought. Change a wiper blade when it's broken, you, rather than doing it out in the parking lot, put it in your shed that you only heat your area maybe at 45 degrees, you don't need a 70-degree work area, but change the wiper blade inside, or so.
And remember that, it'd be a lot of cost savings to do that before the concrete came in, you know.
Oh, yes.
You know, so if we need to plumb in a little bathroom and sink and stuff, which I agree with, it could all be done prior and, because you're talking, the whole thing will have concrete, right?
Yes,
Yeah, that was one of my questions too, does the whole building need to be insulated or just part of it?
it could be cut up,
I mean, if you
yeah.
had a couple of them drive-through bays maybe, heated and insulated, you know, I don't know how much you need, you know, for cold storage, like the home health is using, they don't need.
That's why I got myself out of this, because David and I had different ideas, and I was thinking of the future, and David's thinking, but
Today, these carpenters can, let's just say, you're gonna heat, 30 foot of it, okay? I'm just taking that number. They can build a temporary wall. You know what I'm saying, removable and everything, and say down the road, all of a sudden, you know, we need, just throwing something out. The sheriff needs, you know, got something going on, all the time, they can take and move that wall, let's go another 10 feet, because we got these doors, we can always remember that wall could be moved. So we just insulate the inside and the outside of that wall, and it's just called a temporary wall. I suppose we'd have to make sure that's legal and everything, but they do it all the time.
Because they're not putting a ceiling in or anything, are they?
No.
Not now, but that would come with however much you want to.
Apparently there's it has the ability to be insulated later if we want to, that's something they designed for, but it's not insulated now.
Yeah. Are the doors
The
insulated?
doors are insulated,
Oh, that's, yeah. Might as well do
the
that.
two-window door.
Yeah.
I would make a motion that we don't go with red. People drive down the street and they're not gonna see our courthouse, they're not gonna see the social service building, they're gonna see that. So, that's just a joke.
yeah, it is kind of, it does stick out, but, this was just an idea, and again, David, this is kind of deja vu, because this is why I stepped out of when we were talking together as how we were building, and I started adding expense, and Dave, I don't need that, and we just need this, and so that's why I stepped away and let Dave take over, because he knows exactly what he needs and wants.
And I hate to see it end up too small.
No, we don't want it small.
I want to take up the whole lot.
Yeah. So when I come to these meetings, I don't get a pulling.
You might have to fight for it.
No, I think it's a good idea, because you can drive around here on weekends, and we do have quite a few vehicles sitting around.
Correct. The assessor's vehicles could be parked over there.
Yeah.
David's truck would be inside.
In the past, we've had squirrels eat the wires out of them, you know, that's just great when that happens.
I guess when Dave and I started on this, you hit that $100,000 mark, and that's when you have to add that engineering to it. And
Stuff like this, you could just add.
we would just keep adding to it every year and stay under that.
There is something in here that says that, and there again, it's gonna be a lawyer thing to figure that out, but it does say that you can't piecemeal it. I don't know, that way I read it, but,
Just
that's the way I read it, it might not be the case.
Another question for him is the waiver.
Yes.
Yeah,
You know, I've read that, another, I don't know if it applies to us, it's something to think about, it wouldn't cost anything to try it. You know, if they don't grant it, well, fine. It's not an occupied building, I gotta think there's,
Is there a way to get local contractors to get?
yeah, we
it?
definitely wanna look into that. They're probably all, you know, it could be 2 years down the road now.
Where's Cleary and stuff?
Waverly? And there's a few of them around town, that's just why I grabbed that.
Okay.
And there's getting to be, it's crazy, I never heard of them. About year and a half ago, 2 years at most, all of a sudden I'm driving around seeing all these Cleary buildings, in town, out of town, and I don't, my buddy T.C. Hertz, that's what his is, and I could ask him, beautiful,
Oh, yeah.
beautiful building.
And like I said, this guy, he just did that, we don't, you know, we can go with anybody.
I'd say, could we give him the okay to throw it out there to get some local bids, and should we stay with the same, what he's got, so,
Yeah.
40,
This is just.
30 by
look at,
80.
An idea.
well, but what, and I'm for that, we also kind of have to know kind of what we want too. I mean,
If there's any major things,
are we doing 2 stalls heated, are we doing a little bathroom, are we doing floor drain, or, you know, if it's,
Well, see, that kind of stuff has to be in before it's,
yeah, so I mean, that's,
but again, Dave and I had already discussed all this, and
should we at some point get the other departments in here and have another meeting?
sounds good.
I guess I'm not sure, they won't help, you know, I think their time is totally tied up.
Yeah.
I had Chris, emergency management has a pretty good handle on what, you know, he talks to them every day, he kind of represents them.
we've tried to put up a building that is economical yet efficient as we can do, so we don't have the public screaming, we're building a building here. We really didn't.
There's a plan and then just kind of move on forward with things.
We're in the beginning with me having my pole shed out at my place. It was 15 years old and the poles were rotted off and gone. That's why I got I-beams from the county. That's why I had to buy beams put in the ground. So I'm not a pole shed person, but when you put a concrete wall up around with footings and put studs on top of that, you created an expense. And look at this, this is a pole shed for $85,000. But I'm trying to think of what will best suit us in the long run. I'm not a pole shed person, but they have different ways of putting concrete posts in the ground and nailing the poles to them. But again, the more I opened my mouth up, it was cha-ching, 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 and I finally one day said, David, every time I say something, it's more expensive. So I'll let David do this.
Does the city have an ordinance for size wise, or do we exempt?
This setback from the well, sidewalk is 20 feet to the east side, 15 to the alleyway, if you're coming and going through the alleyway. It could be right on the alleyway if there were no doors there, but we needed to open those doors.
Residential there is.
Is there?
Yeah, and this is too long, I know that for sure, but I think, and then there's a department that you can go to, with the city council and talk to them, and then they discuss, and I can just about tell you that it's not gonna be a rickety old building, you know, they look at all that.
No, see, we had to talk, I talked with Buzz about 10. See, you have an ordinance about 10 roofs.
Johnson Controls is here, I guess.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Anyways, we had to get their permission to do this. And they would give it, there's a word for that I can't.
Variance?
A variance.
Yeah.
They would allow us to do this.
Now, what that, definitely with that building on there, that's probably not that's something we can look at, Dave can look at, but I'm guessing they'll work with us.
Correct.
And you're talking the east end of that lot over there, correct?
Yes.
East side, yeah.
No, Buzz said we could get variances to do, that wouldn't be a problem. But again, the cost to stay under that 100,000 is why this has been projected. Now, if we want to spend more, but everything is about this.
Well, and we got engineering costs too.
But we're trying to keep the
Right.
engineer out of it,
Right,
because
correct.
we've already spent $60,000 on engineering on a building that you don't want to know what's gonna cost to build.
I do.
And the plans are sitting in there somewhere, so
Yeah.
you've probably seen them.
Yeah.
We don't need that for a building.
So we should probably try to stay local if we can, if, but like you said, if everybody's too busy, then
I think we get some recommendations as far as from all of us, as far as what we want, and then we'll start putting some things together as far as the building we want. And we're gonna have to have, I don't know whether it would be Mark that's gonna do this for us as far as how that works, but we're gonna have some legal, advice as far as what we can do and what, if we can do these exceptions, or if we're gonna have to have a licensed engineer do it. If it's just quotes, it says quotes are from local, so, I mean, there's other things down the road that we're gonna have to figure out, but I don't know if that's really today's decision.
No. Again, if we go over that $100,000 mark, and we have to have an engineer.
It does say exceptions in here, so that, but there again, exceptions from competitive bids and quotations, but I don't know what's all in those code items. So, maybe it worked for us, maybe it won't, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Review and possible action on donation of vacation hours. And here's the draft. And everybody give a few minutes here looking at that. And
Rich, did this change from the last time, any of the verbiage on here at all?
I added that her on like the top part where it was just his that we
Okay.
had thought. I had asked Renee Von Boltman about those couple questions that we had. I think I had forwarded all that to you guys, but, those questions were, let's see here. Taxing the vacation hours. So the only part that would get taxed would be the person that uses it. So let's say you want to transfer sometime to Mike, something happened. Nothing gets done for you. It'll only get used when he uses the 8 hours,
Okay.
let's say. Let's see, and then Renee just said, let's see, she's not familiar with the LEAD program associated with the Internal Revenue Service. There were 2 LEAD requirements under the FFCRA that expired on 12/31/20. It was part of the stimulus package. Otherwise, sorry, I'm just reading here. Everything, so if you guys were to pass the policy, and be administered by the auditor's office, so as far as, basically to you guys, it'd be like an item of note if someone, we would come up with a form that someone would fill out, if they were to transfer this, they sign it, who they're giving it to. Technically, really, Lindsay would be the only one that knows about it. If she was the one that does all the payroll, she'd be switching the vacation hours. We could put it as an item of note on the next agenda that just said there was a transfer. You guys technically wouldn't even know the names of who it was transferred to and from, just with the HIPAA.
That was my big thing, I didn't want
Yeah.
somebody coming up here trying to explain
Yeah.
their health thing.
No, it would, as long as if it was something that we didn't see fit would meet the requirements as far as what happened, the scenario, we could bring that to you and without having to release any names, kind of give you the scenario and you guys would approve it. Otherwise, it would just stay basically in the auditor's office in that position, and then just be noted that some hours were transferred.
if I give Jim a week's vacation,
Yep.
or hours, I give it to him, it doesn't go into a pool, and then he draws out of this pool, or?
No, so he would have to exhaust all of his sick or vacation time prior to getting any time. And once you transfer it in here, he would have 30 days to use that. If he doesn't use it, then it gets, I mean, you already lost it because you transferred it.
Sure.
And then it would come off your time if you don't use it.
Does it go back to me then?
No.
If he doesn't, once
No.
I give it up.
Once
I
you
get it.
transfer it, it's gone.
There he is. I think you will, I think you will.
I'll add to this, my wife at the bank was telling me that they have that at First Citizens. And made me think, and when you said a pool, that's what they do, is they put it into a pool. And 100% of the time, the person that needs it isn't the person that comes in to talk to the bank. You know, it's somebody like a husband or a friend or a mom or a dad or something. So, and she said it's very confidential. It works very well. Now, she said you had to understand that the bank policy is they can carry over their vacation, okay? So, at the end of the year, some of them just say, I want to donate, 40 hours, of, you know, I want that to go into the pool. Of, you know, and it's not necessarily used for a year or two, you know, that pool money just sits in there and then.
It'd be there forever, huh?
Yeah, and again, they can't draw it back out, you know, but it's one of those deals, and I don't know how, well, we don't have vacation, but I don't know how that works upstairs, if they get vacation, they use it or lose it?
They can roll over so many hours.
Okay, so that, if, that could work too on, at the end of the year, if somebody wanted to say, you know what, I'll donate 40 hours, because then you get your new vacation come the first of the year, whenever it is. That's, and I guess the bottom line is that it works very well at the bank. They have had to use it, and it's a good deal.
Yeah, I can check into how it works doing a pool like that, just on our end, what we would have to do in the system, how, kind of keep track of it, but,
Yeah,
and
and
that's an option too.
it's one of those deals that Mark said, if he's gonna get, you know, then, yeah, I think it'll work either way. You know, if you wanna donate that time to somebody and you just do it at the time of need.
Okay. So it says review and possible action, or, what's everybody's thoughts?
I think it's a good thing.
I think it's
I
good.
do too. As long as we're under the rules and regulations with it, I think, yeah.
My concern was the privacy thing, and that's a big thing, so that got answered, so I'll move to approve the donation of vacation hours policy.
Jim has made a motion.
I will second that.
Mike has made a motion to. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those disapproving, say nay. Hearing none, this motion has passed, so. This is now,
And we'll get copies sent out, just so everyone has a copy too, and that they're aware that it's.
okay. Moving down, appoint board member for homewards in housing.
So I had received this letter, and I guess I didn't have it on those board appointments that someone who was part of this. This is the one that we do get $5,000 towards every year. We've already went through and approved that. They wanted me to send them back the form of who our current representatives are. So that's where this came up. It was previously Stan Walk. They want someone on the board and then someone from the public. So it was Stan and Tony that were currently on there.
So they'll both be,
So, yeah, we're gonna end up probably having to find someone else to do the other part too.
so what we need to do is find
And
a board.
when I talked to Tony, they met once a year, and this past year they did it on Zoom. He said it's not too bad,
Who would like to be, that's unfortunate, but I don't really know what this is about. Stan never ever talked about it. I never ever heard him, that's because when I seen this, it was like, what's this?
but.
Where are they out, or what do they do?
So it is out of Humboldt.
Apparently that must be a Zoomer all the time, then. That's
And that's why I'm
Humboldt's
wondering if they don't meet very often, that's why Stan probably never really talked about it.
I got a thing from Tony actually a while back, and it's their pamphlet, and they advertise themselves as a not-for-profit housing organization for rural Iowa. And what he had described is they have so many funds that they, you can do minor repair grant program, a home improvement grant or loan program, or a down payment grant or loan program. And it has eligibility requirements, family size, different things like that, dollar amounts. And I remember he did say that it's a good program, but there's only so much money that's in there. When the money's gone, the program's gone. So it doesn't usually last, I don't know, into the summer maybe, but it's not a year-round thing. So that's kind of what they do.
Is that like through the state?
It says a nonprofit housing organization. Yeah.
We gave $8,000 to them?
Five.
Every county, you think it's 5?
I think that's what they request. I just haven't copy that, they sent us.
Is there people in Mitchell County that benefit from this program?
I don't
Donating or
have,
don't
I don't
know?
have a whole lot of background on it.
That's a good question.
Tony gave me that brochure too, and a lady at work was asking, and I asked Tony, and I think that's where he put these out, and I gave it to her, I don't know how she, because she wanted to bring programs out there for stuff, and I asked Tony. Then I see he put one on everybody's table.
Yeah, that'd be a good question. I mean, does anybody know about it, and is it being utilized in Mitchell County?
Knows about it for one thing, maybe. 'Cause,
We gotta flip a coin.
I'll do that. I'll do this.
Okay,
Sorry.
we should
thank you, Jim.
find out what our benefit is too.
Yeah, right.
So,
Words in court against housing. Yeah, I just,
Thanks, Jim.
So I think you need to approve me. It needs to have a motion.
I'll make a motion for Jim to be the Homeward Incorporated Housing nominee.
Mark has made a motion, Todd has seconded for Jim to be our representative to Homewards Inc.'s housing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, Jim, we got more work.
Yep.
Items of note, meetings attended.
I'll just go, we had the engineers, meeting thing that we were entitled to sit in on. And I didn't review this real well, but I guess they just kind of basically also went through the same thing as what happened at the supervisors meeting where, road use tax funds, there might be a slight decrease, but, from what the feds have put into the system, feds put $1.75 billion into the, excuse me, road use tax fund is $1.75 billion. It's down $50 million, but that's a very small percentage when you look at the billion part of it. The feds injected $122 million into the fund, really, we're not gonna see any road use tax fund decreases, they're not gonna be that bad. And the formula, the way they divide it up is 42.5% of that goes to the state, 37.5% of it goes to counties, and 20% of it goes to cities, so, user fees, which as far as, they're gonna put user fees on electric and hydrogen vehicles because they don't burn gas.
Right.
And they don't get the gas tax, so that's something in the future they're gonna think about. If you've got an electric car, you're gonna have to pay a user fee to inject it into road use tax, so that was that.
Mike?
Well, I had a public health meeting, and a lot of it was on COVID. COVID numbers are really going down, and I asked why, and they feel it's because people ain't getting tested. People are sick, you know what it says, they are gonna recover, so they're not getting tested. The home health, they currently have like 80 clients that they're going out to the homes to see and help. They started doing their mass vaccinations, and last Thursday they had over 200 people. Took 30 minutes to fill them slots once they put it out. That's how fast 200 of them went. The St. Ansgar School, they vaccinated 86 staff. They're gonna go to the Osage School, and they have about 125 there, depending on how many take it. The next phase will be for essential workers, will be like firefighters at the end of February. They figured they'd get to that part. They are seeing reinfections after 90 days too with people. So the Iowa test is gonna stop on Monday. It already has. I've been yesterday, because the numbers are down. Some days they only get 4 people coming in. You can get tested, you know, clinic in St. Ansgar, clinic here, Walgreens, you know, a lot of places, so they're gonna stop it. And they got a grant for $67,000 to help with the vaccination. They're supposed to ask Rachel, you know, when all these departments submitted bills for COVID relief, they were just wondering where that's at, you know.
So we received, I think it was like 134,000 back. And so because where it was expensed out of was the general fund, so that money got put back into the general fund. We
Okay,
did it as one receipt into the 99 department.
okay.
So it does offset where they used it. It won't directly go back to each department. It's,
Okay.
as long as it goes to the same fund, that's all that matters.
Okay, they were just wondering if it.
Yep, we didn't get
Okay,
that.
I can tell them at the next meeting.
Yep.
That's where it went. They're gonna try to go into the CARES Act and see if they can get compensation for their salaried nurses, because they're putting in a lot of overtime to see if they can compensate them better, you know, all through the CARES Act. And they said they need a generator for their building over there. They're gonna try to get a grant, so they're working on that first to see if they can get one that way. And then they went on to tell me that they're renting 2 storage units, and they got stuff at the firehouse, so this building would be a good thing for them, they said. And they currently have 6 nurse aides working in the community, and they just hired a new one. That's pretty much it.
So they're getting they're getting paid overtime though, but they want more?
No, they're not getting, they're working overtime.
Oh, but not
They're
getting
salary
paid
overtime,
overtime.
but they're not getting paid
Oh.
overtime. I know. That was, you know, they have a board over there, and the board thought the nurses over there should get extra compensation for all the overtime they did because of COVID. So they're looking into the
Part of
CARES
salary.
Act. What's that?
It's part of salary.
It's part of salary, I know,
I
I didn't wanna say.
You're kind of, that's kind of what you're signing up for. I mean, it sucks right now, but same for ours. I don't get paid overtime for working the election. And we work a lot of overtime.
But generators don't pay, they hooked up, they got it hooked up to the city.
Yeah, they're hooked up.
Just any other generator kicks in when it,
Yeah.
when the lights go
I
on?
don't know if it kicks in immediately, or say the.
They wanna have an emergency backup, but the thing that is it isn't much of a backup when the generator's parked out here at Barker's storage unit,
Oh, for over there?
I believe so.
Well, they did act like, I didn't, sound like they didn't have a generator at all.
Oh, they have one somewhere.
Seems like David said that, not you mentioned that it's in one of their storage buildings.
Yes,
So they
it's
probably
in
don't
one of the
know.
storage
Maybe they don't
units.
realize that.
And David has to hook up to it, or Chris, and bring it down.
In an ice storm. I mean, that's when it fails, is in an ice storm.
Maybe they want one on, well, it sounds like they want one on site, you know, but.
Well,
concern was there.
They wanna buy a backup unit that's mounted outside.
Their concern was the COVID vaccines need to be refrigerated, you know, and the power to go down, they don't wanna,
Correct.
it sounds like it's going out the door as fast as they're getting it, so, you know, pretty much. But
Most of the time, the utilities are, if there's a storm or something, they have time to fire that generator out and
X amount.
everything, but there is, don't get me wrong, there's exceptions of
Oh, yeah.
bam, power went off and
Plus there's
what
a-
for, what was the deal? But, so, yeah, that, like you say, the vaccines are going out as fast as they can get it, but refrigerated stuff is pretty important.
Right, there's a generator here, correct? For this one.
This,
Yeah.
there is a big generator here, right between the sheriff's office and the
Yeah.
courthouse.
I suppose if light, power lines go down, then the generator,
In town, you can
It
work
doesn't
either,
matter.
yeah,
so they want it right there. But if we got one.
yeah. But they're gonna look into it during.
No, that's, it's a diesel.
Yeah. But do we have one in the storage shed for?
Oh.
There's one in the storage shed out of it. Again, with that unit over here, that little generator would be sitting here, but I think they wanna buy one that's mounted right
Right, they wanna
outside the
want
building,
one, you know.
sitting on a slab.
Right,
that-
that's,
Where it will kick in immediately.
and they thought they could, you know, might be able to get a grant.
And I think they were also
CARES Act.
discussing the CARES Act on
Right,
that.
yes. Yep. So that's the meeting I had.
I didn't have any meetings.
None for me.
Todd?
I had a Michigan Economic Development, and I already told you about Tony's situation, but they also talked about, a little bit about TIF. And they're all on board with making some adjustments. I don't, you know, I'm sure they've heard the new board talk, and so they're in the process of talking about some adjustments, a little stiffer, to be able to receive it, because they all, and I kind of agree with them, this housing project does draw families to town and the housing's down, but they understand that most of us are kind of, we'd like to make some adjustments to that, receiving that money and stuff, so I felt that was pretty good, that they totally understand, and they all agreed that we could, let's make some adjustments, let's get together maybe, or like Jim's letter that he presented, you know, we just need to kind of get together on those and decide what we would like to see done, and so I was okay with that. And that's about all.
You think we can fill it pretty quickly, Tony slot, or?
Tony's
I
gone
don't know
next
if Mark
Tuesday.
Walk's still on, but I called him and, to ask him if it's a position that has to be posted, and which he thought it probably would, but he'd look into it. So,
Not a county job, it's.
I mean,
Nonprofit organization, whatever.
yeah, I don't know if we would
That's
have
what they come under.
a, in-house, or if we need to go out and.
He's, the person that takes over that position will have to have education.
Correct. So that's why I think we probably need to open it up and,
But I think that's you guys, economic development.
yeah, and we're supposed to have a meeting, this week. I tried calling Terry Burns yesterday and he didn't call me back, so I was hoping we'd have it soon, but Monday, I guess, I shouldn't say that, because Monday didn't work for the other guy that is on it, so as soon as we have it and I find any more details out about it, I'll let you know, because I guess I'm one of them that's on the hiring part of it.
Anything else?
quite a few, because over the time here.
Okay,
Friesen and one's site on Highway 218 in Sinansker. Friesen 6, 385th Street in Osage. Friesen N2, 465th Street in Sinansker. Cooper Hog Site 2, 2069 Highway 218 in Osage. Cooper Cattle, 1980, 410th Street in Osage. McIntyre Finisher Farm, 4752 Lancer Avenue in Stacyville. And then Underwood Finisher Farm, 3050 340th Street in Osage.
And I could look that up, but why do we do that? What do we just,
They have to, do annual reports, they can do short forms, and then I believe it's every 4 years, they have to do the longer, and then we just update that they have,
okay.
turn in their information.
they have to do a manure management plan though every year, and that's what,
Yep,
and there's so many hog buildings in the county that we have this every month, or every week.
quite a bit.
I could be wrong, but I think it's to make sure they're not over applying on the land, that they have enough acres to put the gallons on.
Okay.
Correct, Mark?
Yeah.
And that's why
Okay,
they're-
so these are buildings that are already up.
Yes, correct,
This is
yes.
buildings that are already in existence.
And
Okay.
they gotta have a plan to get rid of the manure. You can't put it all on
Okay.
Yeah.
It's gotta be,
Got it.
you can only apply once a year on the ground, and there's a lot of stipulations too.
Okay.
So, that's what I know about it.
Okay, now we're down to public comment. Jim? He's pretty quiet over there now.
And just observe.
Well, hearing none, I guess the meeting is over.